It's your girl, the Bookish Baddie, back with a book review. I want to talk about my girl, Sula. Y'all, Sula changed my life. When it's tabbed up, you know it's real. You know I meant business about this book. So one of my life goals is to read all Toni Morrison's books. I've read Beloved, I've read Jazz, and I've read Home. And now I've read Sula. Hands down my favorite so far. Hands down, without contest, my favorite so far. So I'm going to try to make this a spoiler-free-ish book review. So I'm not going to tell you everything that happens. I really want to talk about some of the themes and takeaways from the book. And then if you haven't read it, I want you to read it. And if you haven't read it in a while, then after you listen to this, go reread it. Comment and let me know if you have some of the same thoughts. Okay? Okay, let's talk about it. So, Sula by Toni Morrison. There are two main characters here. And so those two characters are Nell and Sula. And we start out with them being little girls and they become besties. Very cute friendship. The girls become besties. They, do everything together. They hang out together, but they're also living in a really complex community. So there's a lot happening. There's a lot of moving pieces that we hear about in their community. A lot of different characters, even their own families add a layer of complexity to their friendship because of how they're raised and or what they're raised around, right? So at some point, Sula, leaves, like when she's of age, she goes off, does the college thing, etc., etc. And then she comes back. And when she comes back, they're like happy to be reunited, besties. They grew up together, they grew up besties, they're, glad to be back around each other. Life is even more complex at this point. They've both lived separate lives at this point, like their lives have taken on different paths. And so now we're seeing the very, very stark differences in the two women because they're women now. And there is something that happens, something big that really sends them on two different paths. It is something that causes a major rift in their friendship. And that's when it really gets juicy for me, because then we're seeing two women who are similar in a lot of ways, but they are so different in one drastic way. And so Nell really values being accepted. She really values tradition. Sula really values freedom. She really values non-conformity. And so when we see these two things come to a head, neither of them are understanding each other. And of course, the book is named Sula because that's the main character. But we're really dealing with these two characters. But Sula in particular is the focus of this book because you see how society behaves. And even as you're reading it, you're like, okay, well, Sula, you're wrong. And I had to take a step back and say to myself, like, what is so threatening about a Black woman who believes beyond belief in complete and total freedom? It's not for everybody. Everybody's different. But she is like, hey, we don't own any people. No person is my possession. No husband is my possession. This house is not my possession. I don't hold on to anything because I don't own anything. I'm here for an experience. She says something like that. Let me go find the quote. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. So it is on page 119 if you have the physical copy, on most editions, of course. And it says, she was completely free of ambition, with no affection for money, property, or things, no greed, no desire to command attention or compliments, no ego. For that reason, she felt no compulsion to verify herself, be consistent with herself. Like, she just was like, I don't care about any of that. I'm here to experience life. Like, I'm not holding tight to anything. And something about that is so threatening. And you see it in the way that they describe her relationships and how she's perceived by everyone else in the community. And it is just so like eye opening on how how harshly we judge people who value freedom over all else. And so we see this like two totally different situations happening between Nell and Sula, where Nell is very accepted in the community, but she's just really unfulfilled in life, and where Sula is, you know, ostracized in community, but she is living the life that she wants to be living, if that makes sense. And so it just got really, really, really deeply mirroring. It made you take a look at yourself. Am I living a true, authentic life? Knowing that being misunderstood is the tax that you pay for authenticity sometimes. And so Sula was extremely misunderstood in her community, but she was living her authentic truth. She was being exactly who she was and exactly who she wanted to be. And which of those is more important? Is it more important to be in community and be accepted and be happy? Or is it more important to be your most authentic self? And I think most of us straddle that line. Most of us live somewhere in the area in between those two things. And so it just was something really beautiful about seeing a character play out that extreme authenticity. It also has some really strong themes around friendship and sisterhood. Again, I don't want to give like a spoiler per se, so I'll just say that when I got to the end of the book, the friendship and sisterhood realization that I had, the moment that Nell had at the end of the book, it was so rich. It was so powerful. This book was a 10 out of 10 for me. I'm going to try to read to y'all just a couple of my all-time favorite quotes that I've read before and I've even said before, but I simply didn't realize which book they had come from. I knew they were Toni Morrison quotes, but I didn't know what books they had come from. And they hit hard in the context of the book. I mean, they hit hard anyway because Toni is just that girl as it relates to the pen, that woman, that legend as it relates to her pen. But reading them in the context of the book just made them that much richer. And some of these you probably have already heard before. Let's see if I can find them quick. Okay, here it is. Page 143 in most editions. Lonely, ain't it? Yes, but my lonely is mine. Now your lonely is somebody else's, made by somebody else and handed to you. Ain't that something? A secondhand lonely. I've always loved that quote, but reading it in the context of the book, chilling. And then the very last line of the book. It was a fine cry, loud and long, but it had no bottom and it had no top, just circles and circles of sorrow. And I'm going to leave you on that note. Read this book. Read this book. Read this book. Read this book. You will not regret it. It is a beautifully written book. The audiobook is amazing. Toni Morrison narrates the audiobook, so I did an immersive read and read and listened, and I could not recommend more. All right, until next time. Bye.